Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Come on in and hang out with us today. Um, Yay, there we go. How's it going? I hope you all are well. I am Dr. Tammy, your success strategist and literacy educator. I help you strategize how to move in the direction of more and prepare for what's next. And one of the ways I do that is through my book discussions, my virtual book discussions, and my online global reading community, which is amazing. So if you're not a part, I invite you to join us. If this is your first time joining me, please say hello in the comments. Please tell me where you're joining from. If you're one of my OCs, my original catalysts, and you've been with me for a minute, definitely just say hello in the comments. You know how we do it here. And if you know someone who would be interested in our discussion, we are discussing the Four Agreements. Let me get my angles right. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And today we're talking about don't make assumptions. And this one is really good because what it does is if you're doing this one, you're probably doing one of the other ones, the previous ones we've talked about. And if this is your first time joining us this week, hey, Sassy Nay, hey, how you doing? If this is your first time joining us, you can go back and watch over on YouTube the other two discussions. So every week we're discussing this book. Next week is our last discussion. And at the end of today's broadcast, I'm going to announce the next book so you can get it and have it in time to read with us in July. So we're reading The Four Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. And we're reading chapter 4. That's what we read this past week. And we're talking about don't make assumptions. Hello, note to self guy. How you doing? Hey, Brandon, how's it going? Thank you for joining. So we don't make assumptions. So today, well, I have a few ladies who are joining me. You probably see them on the previous discussions, but I have a few ladies joining me today. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves and then we'll get started. We'll get started. We'll just dive in. All right. So here we go. Let's see if I can get them in here. Give me a minute. Maybe. There we go. Hey, ladies. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hey. Oh, okay. Oh.
Good.
There we go. Y'all can hear me? Say something so I can make sure I can hear you. Okay. So,
Yeah.
who would like to introduce yourself first? Oops. Uh-oh, hold on.
Mike
There we
was
go.
muted.
I had unmuted you already, so go ahead. You got it.
Okay. I am Trifania, and I am Elegant Granny. Most people know me as Elegant Granny. I am a restoration strategist, and what I do is I help victims and survivors of abuse transition from a life of toxic relationships to a life of healthier relationships. And I also supply their supporters who want to help them to get to the better side of life with educational tools and resources so that they can help them succeed at that. And I also do a podcast bringing awareness of domestic violence, child abuse, sexual violence, and also suicide prevention as it relates to abuse.
Awesome. Yay. All right, LaShawn, would you introduce yourself? Hey, Frazier, how are you? Thank you. Hugs to
Hello, my
you.
name is LaShawn. I am a wife, mother, and I am an educator. I'm a district coordinator for 504 services, dyslexia services, and response to intervention services in Allegan ISD. And I enjoy serving our community and our students and families with the resources that they need to be successful in the education setting.
All right, LaShawn. So I'm going to have you check your volume because
Okay.
I had a difficult time hearing you, and I don't know if that's true for everyone, but I figured if I am, we all are. So if you could just check it just a little bit, turn it up, or make sure, I don't know. Yeah, because sometimes if you have it on silent, it'll interfere with the actual volumes. So yes, thank you, Fraser. Appreciate you being here. Okay, ladies, so let's just dive in. Don't make assumptions. So this chapter, what I realized is that when you make assumptions, what it does is it causes you to take things personally, which was chapter 3, which could invite you to not be as impeccable with your word, because now you're telling yourself things based on assumptions rather than what is real. And so what I found is that if you are making assumptions about what people are thinking, what they're feeling, and any of that, then what you're doing is you're going to create this space where it's going to affect you emotionally. We're emotional beings, so it's going to affect you emotionally, which means then you're going to take it personally. Then you're going to be like, and we're going to talk about it because, I think one of the biggest areas that people make assumptions is in our relationships. And that could be friendships, that could be, family relationships. It doesn't have to always be romantic relationships, just our relationships with other people. And so that is one of the things that I find that we make assumptions quite a bit. He talks about that. That is not our biggest assumption, but that is one of them that I find that I think we all can relate to in some way. If you've ever had a friend, you ever had anyone else in your life besides yourself, and you did, because you would not be here otherwise. You at least had it with someone who gave you birth, right? Who gave you life. So what we'll do is let's just talk about. So what we'll do is go around and talk about what aspects of this idea, this concept of don't make assumptions, really resonated with you. Because I can talk.
The intro actually got to me. It was saying that the problem with making assumptions is that we believe they are the truth, and we do. We could swear they are real. We make assumptions about what others are doing or thinking. We take it personally. Then we blame them and react by sending emotional poison with our word. That is why whenever we make assumptions, we're asking for problems. We make an assumption, we misunderstand, we take it personally, and we end up creating a whole big drama for nothing. And this is why I think it is so very important to spend time with yourself. Like, we love spending time with people, but we do not spend enough time with ourselves, because spending time with yourself helps you to build your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-value, and this puts you in a place, in a position to where you are being more proactive with how you are and how you respond, as opposed to being reactive and taking things personally, and then not being impeccable with your word. So spending time with yourself and getting to know yourself, so your level of awareness of who you really are and what makes you tick and what makes you act the way you do, that is so crucial at this point when it comes to this agreement right here.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that, what was that? Is that feedback from me? The other thing I think is that we find evidence to support whatever that assumption is. So that's how it becomes more and more true to us, because, and this, and this, and this, and you have all this evidence. So now it seems true because you've gathered this evidence that's not really evidence, and that's not even true, because what you're attaching to it has nothing to do with it. Normally has nothing to do with it. It's just because it happened in the same time and space, you say it is. And so I think that's one of the things, that's one of the dangers of it, and that's how it becomes more and more true. And that's how it becomes that tape we talked about in one of the previous chapters, that tape that we're playing over and over again, that it's true, and we're like, we believe it, like, yes. So I'm done. But I just think that, we start gathering evidence, like, ooh, and there's an example, and there's an example. And so we just got to be careful about, how we're validating those assumptions, which we shouldn't be making anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, those assumptions that we make, what I find when dealing with people, a lot of times your assumptions, and even though like the evidence that you say that we can build our case on, doesn't even explain why the other people act the way they do or respond the way they respond. Like we respect them to do something and they're not doing it, and then we have these assumptions, and because they're wondering why we're acting and responding because they have not, we haven't even tapped into the root of why they even think that way.
Mm-hmm.
We
Right.
haven't even tapped into it because of our assumptions, and we're getting frustrated and upset over something that we know nothing of.
And we can't make assumptions about what other people are doing because they are coming from a different perspective. You can't get in the mind of someone else. You can't, look at it from their perspective. Their experiences are their experiences, and their belief system, what they think and feel, is based on what they have experienced. You cannot interject a thing. It's kind of like, I think he gave an example of like a movie. Like that it's we all get our own perspective, and we come with something. You come with something to the table, and so you can't really, project that onto others and say, this is how they think. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they're feeling. You can't unless you ask them and they tell you. And then you believe them. Sean, you wanted to say something?
One of the things that resonated with me is that the reason for making assumption is because we're afraid for asking for clarification,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
really, the underlying tones make a difference because you have to personally be in a good space to approach someone to ask questions for clarity, so that you're not heightening your own emotions or flying off the handle based on a response you may receive. And the other thing that's important, he said, was we create emotional poison by taking things personally because we gossip about it. And
Ooh.
it just fuels the fire more, like you all were saying before. You make that assumption, and without any regard for approaching that person or the situation to get clarity or more understanding within yourself or with the other people, then we gossip, and everyone has their share of how that occurs. And with more and more, I mean, it just more than one encounter. You may be, speaking with someone one day in one situation, and then that turns into the next day or the next hour talking about it again or bringing it up in your home or wherever. So I can see how, that poison, as he said, or that negativity invades your system, and it invades your mind and your thoughts, when you just let it linger and you just allow that to continue to be able to control your emotions.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm over here trying to share out here. So, all right. So, and he said that. He said we create a lot of emotional poison just by making assumptions and taking it personally because we start gossiping about our assumptions. So then we start, because I think what we do is then we start going in and we start, okay, so this is what I think is happening. This is what I think this person is doing. And you start talking to somebody because you're really trying to process it. I think that's our way of processing. But in that, it becomes like gossip or these assumptions that you're spreading. And that's what gossiping is when you take one idea that may not be true and you share it. And so because of that, you're making these assumptions based on how you're perceiving something, and then when you share it, it creates this whole thing, and then you get all emotional about it. You're like, ah! You start sharing your evidence that you've gathered, and you start putting all this together, and then it becomes a hot mess.
Yes. Yes.
Becomes a hot mess. So the
Yes.
other thing, okay, so let's talk about relationships. And he talks about relationships, and he talks about how making assumptions in our relationships is really asking for problems, because what we do is we make assumptions, and that's how fights get started, because you're assuming this person is acting, thinking, feeling this way because of XYZ, and it may have nothing to do with that. And it probably has nothing to do with you, which what we talked about in one of the previous chapters, right? You can't take it personally. And I think it creates this space for a lot of misunderstandings when we're in friendships or romantic relationships, or, you hear all these stories if you watch reality TV. Or you pay attention, you hear all these stories about people who haven't talked to their parents in all these years. They haven't talked to their sibling in 10 years because something happened. And then when they finally talk, they realize they both had a different story. It was different. And so what are your thoughts on this idea of relationships? What did you get from that section of the chapter when he was talking about relationships, if anything? And it talks about in any kind of relationship, we can make assumptions that others know what we think even, and we don't have to say what we want. So not only is it making assumptions about what they're thinking, it's also that we're assuming they know what we want. They know you want that ring because you're ready to get married. You assume you're ready to have that child. You assume what they think. You assume that they know what you want. That's what you want, but do they know that? Have you expressed that? So I think those are two ideas that he expressed in that. Is there anything else that you want to share, or anything else from that resonated with you?
Just that,
Go ahead, LaShawn, because I talk a lot. So go ahead.
No worries, no worries. I was just going to share, concur that with relationships and making assumptions, it leads to a lot of difficulty and a lot of hurt, and putting up this wall, a barrier between you and that person. And you lose that time that you have with that person, instead of reaching out, it may be because of something in the past that's happened, an assumption has been made to cause a person to put up a wall. And then that creates a barrier between them and the other person. And it may be because they're afraid to ask questions. They may not feel safe in the environment to do so. And it's only a mental block in their minds. But like you said, Tammy, when they open up and end up talking to the person, they figure out, it was a different perspective from their part. And then on the person's part, there's a different perspective. But I think this is so key in a relationship, that one must express how you feel, express your needs and express your wants in a relationship. And it's a two-way dialogue, a two-way communication. And so there does need to be a lot of clear communication. But when we make assumptions, there's that wall or barrier preventing that clear communication from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think assumptions do. I like that last part, prevent the communication from happening, because you just assume, and then it's just unspoken and it goes unspoken. And I think of Langston Hughes, festers like a sore.
Yeah.
And then run. So, Trifania, you had something you wanted to say.
I face not just me, but other people's experiences where there has been a crisis that happened to them, and people who they thought would be there for them, they get so upset because they said, I do this and this for them, but nobody is there for me. And the question that I always ask them is, what is your definition of a friend? What does a friend do? Do you know what that means for them? Because even though we have people in our life who we feel who deserves a space in our inner circle, our besties, our buddies, our aces, does not mean that they are equipped with everything that we need from someone. It could be somebody else that we wasn't considering a best friend who was better equipped for that. Say, for instance, I had an illness, and LaShawn was my very best friend, and she never came to the hospital to see me like I wanted her to. She never called. Once in a blue moon, I might hear from her. I'm in my feelings because she's my best friend. She's supposed to be like my sister. She's supposed to be there for me when nobody else is there for me. I get upset and she can't understand why I am that upset with her. Okay, never did I even consider the thought of how this thing that I am dealing with could be affecting her. She may not be in a place where she can handle it. Be it that she is my very best friend, she may not be in a place where she can actually handle it. And a lot of people get so upset and they divide and separate their ways from people who are so dear and near to them because they don't think about things how it could be affecting the other person. They don't consider how someone may be assigned in your life to be here for you for this particular thing, but not that particular thing. And that's how I've seen a lot of relationships get destroyed just because of that.
Yeah. And hello, Tanisha. She's joining me live. T Barnes herself. Thank you. And that's the thing. And he said, and I like the idea at the bottom. So for those of you just joining us and you're just coming in, we are talking about the 4 agreements. Let me get my direction together. A guide to personal freedom. And we're talking about the 4 agreements. We're on chapter 4, which is agreement number 3 of the 4. Here we go. And it's don't make assumptions. And he talks about how we need to justify everything. We need to explain it. We need to understand it because that makes us feel safe. And I think that that's also something too. Like, I know we're talking about it like when you're making assumptions, we all do it. And, oh, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. But we make it. But the reason we make it is because it feels safe. Because we need some feelers. And I think I'm going to say this, I probably shouldn't. Women do it more, especially when it comes to romantic relationships. If something's not happening, we feel that space with something, which means then we're making assumptions. And so I think that because that way you feel safe. That way you answer the question whether I should stay or whether I should go. What should I do? And I think that's just one example of how we fill the gap in so it helps us feel safe. So that way we'll know what to do, because otherwise it's very uncomfortable to not know. Of course, like LaShawn said earlier, the answer really is communication. But, we just make the assumptions. That's something we do. And so we have to really be careful about how we make assumptions and how that feeds into us taking things personally. Because if you're making an assumption, then you got to take it personally. And you got to remember, it's not about you, boo. Which I said last week on the discussion last week. And so that is something that I think that I need to just put that out there and say the reason we make assumptions is to feel safe, but you got to be very careful about those assumptions because everything we've talked about so far is a consequence of that. I'm done. Anything else? I have another something I want us to talk about.
I think this is where, a lot of what we talked about last week, doing the work, is really, really important. Self-reflection and taking stock of your mental state, your mental emotions about and feelings around certain topics is important. Even with all that's going on in our world today, we really, really have to self-reflect on where we stand. Sometimes we have our own personal situations that challenge us to think differently about it, but unless you've had a personal experience, you don't know. It's the same thing with relationships. You don't know how you're going to respond or react to another person until you're put into that situation. So really just taking thought or self-reflecting on, why am I feeling this way? Why am I responding this way? Why am I upset or angry about certain things that I'm going through is really, really important.
Ooh, and Sean said it eloquently, so I'm gonna put it in hip hop terminology, because y'all know, everybody know they do it. If that would have been me, if it was me, you're making an assumption that if you were in that situation, that would happen. And so what she's saying is you can't, until you experience something, you can't say what you're going to do. Otherwise, it's an assumption. And if you make an assumption, well, you're already breaking the agreement with yourself, because now you're probably not being impeccable with your word, because now you are telling yourself things that are not necessarily true, and you are taking it. Then you're going to take things personally. If it had been me, we like to say that, and that's not accurate. We shouldn't be doing that. Like, you have to experience it and and communicate. All right. So the other thing, on page 69, he talks about the number one assumption, the biggest assumption we make. And I want us to talk about that a little bit before we go. And that is, we make the assumptions that everyone sees life the way we do. We assume that others think the way we think, feel the way we feel, judge the way we judge, and abuse the way we abuse. This is the biggest assumption humans make. And this is why we have a fear of being ourselves around others. Just let that sit right there. Y'all make sure you press like and thumbs up if you're on YouTube, and share this out, or tag someone in the comments that would like to hear this discussion and or benefit from the idea and behind this discussion. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. And you don't have to talk on that. You can talk on something else, but anything else from the chapter.
He told us at the very end of the chapter, how we keep ourselves
let's get to the end.
From making those assumptions. And the first thing he said is to ask questions for clarification. There's always room to ask questions, any question. And before we assume or get into getting our emotions involved too much, we must ask first. Ask questions to that other person to improve our relationship, and that will open the door for communication, and communication therefore will improve the relationship. And the second thing he said is find your voice to ask for what you want. And so that again requires a self-reflection, making sure that we know what we want, so we're clear on how we pose those questions to ask for what we want.
Yes. And then Tanisha is saying it is also not helpful to the other person. Absolutely. And I think that's all about, because then you're assuming that the other person knows what you want. You're assuming the other person knows what you're thinking. You must express that, or you can't assume that. You can't expect people to do things based on what you think they know, what you think they're going to do. So yeah. And I like the last part, because that's really big. I'm really big on action. And he was talking about the action. He kept using that word over and over again about take action. Taking this action and doing these things over and over again, strengthens, who you are and and nurturing those seeds that we have within us. So I really like his idea. Take action. What you need comes to you easily because the Spirit moves freely through you. So, yeah, I like that line. That's just a favorite quote. I just do that in there. Trifania, anything? Any final thoughts?
My favorite part is it relates back to what I was saying in the beginning. It also relates to what Sean was saying on self-reflection, and how I'm always advocating spending time with yourself, because spending time with yourself builds your character and builds your awareness of how you actually think and perceive things that really aren't there. And what I like is this line, is when he said, real love is accepting other people the way they are without trying to change them. And when you're creating assumptions and projecting your assumptions, you're wanting other people to change so that you can feel right and not a non-chaotic in your world, while everybody else is chaotic in their world. So that's what I like the most. That um, reinforces how important it is to spend time with yourself, and like Sean said, do some self reflecting, because how you perceive things is not how someone else perceives things. And it doesn't even matter if you are sisters growing up in the same house. Each one of you see things totally different. I am the
Hello.
oldest of
Like my
yeah.
sister and I, we like she's the favorite. She's the favorite. She's because it's all about your perception on, each other. Like you have a different
Yeah.
the way you're being treated even by your parents, you perceive that differently. Sorry, go ahead. I just,
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, my sisters and I, it's four of us girls, and I'm the oldest. And I'm the one who takes the longest to react to something, unless it's a medical emergency or something like that. Then I'm right on it. But when it's in a disagreement in something, I'm the one who's the most silent, because I'm analyzing everything. First, I want to know where the root of the thing came from, how it started, and why is it that you feel the way you do. Okay, I need to understand how this dominoed and snowballed to this. So we have to start from this larger size of the snowball and go backwards from where it came from. That part is important to me. My other sisters, they don't do that. They always want me to hurry up and make a decision, and I'm because I don't take sides. I don't care how much I love you. I don't care how close we are. We could be best friends. I don't do sides. I do what's right.
right.
That's just how I do. And I've trained myself to be that way, because early on as a teen, I saw how that went wrong so many ways, of choosing just because someone's my friend or just because someone's my bestie, how just because of just siding with them, they could be wrong as two left shoes and that other person could be right. But because I chose to be with them, just because, no, that don't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And my family and my friends know that I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna be still and I'm gonna listen to everything everybody says, because in a heated conversation, each party is only seeing what they see. They don't
Yeah.
see the other person's side. They don't hear
Okay.
the other person's side.
So
It's just a
here's a
human thing.
comment for us. So I want to throw this up there. Tanisha said it's as simple as you grew up with the toilet paper roll pulled in a certain way, and another person did not. You think they were putting the roll on wrong, but it's really just different. No, I disagree. There's a
Exactly.
right way to put the toilet paper on the roll, Tanisha. I'm just letting you know I disagree. We're not just different. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I'm just serious. I agree with her. Like, that's a prime example of, growing up like, this is the way you do,
Yeah.
and I get so frustrated. Ugh. And, but it's true. Like, it's just your way to do it. Although I still will say there's a right way to put it on the dispenser. I think there's a right way. Just saying. Janine is laughing at us. I'm going to put up a few comments here. Janine is laughing. Hey, Alan, how's it going? Welcome over on YouTube. I appreciate you joining. Make sure you hit the thumbs up over there. Thank you so much for joining. Okay. So, all right. This sibling thing, living with other people. Little
Yeah.
things like that. It's all about perception. And there's really no right or wrong way. It's just how you do it. And then you ask me, well, why do you do it that way? And then it's like, well, that makes sense according to your thinking, but I still think it's the wrong way. All right. So any other final thoughts before we do our outro? And I want to announce the next book selection for the group, which I'm so excited about. I hope everybody get excited with me, but I'm really excited about. Any final thoughts, ladies? Anything else that we haven't discussed or that you want to share? That may have been your final thought. I know I asked a few minutes ago, but anything else? All right,
No,
good
that's all
deal.
for me.
This was really a short chapter. So if you haven't checked out the book, make sure y'all go check it out. We are reading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And we have one more week to discuss this. Next week, we'll talk about the final agreement. We'll wrap up the book. The final agreement is, I lost it that fast out of my brain. It just disappeared. Always do your best. So we're going to talk about that next week, and that'll wrap up this book. And I'm going to announce the next book before the ladies do their outro. I was going to do it at last, but I'll do it now. But then, let me do this so y'all can see it. The next book is What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker by Damon Young. And so I hope you'll read it with us. We'll warn you when you read this book, it's a memoir. So we're going to get into some deep topics, and we're going to talk about them on here. We'll be talking about them more in depth in our group, but we will be talking about them here, and we'll be talking about some of the things that are relevant to what's going on today with this book. Now, I'm going to warn you, this book is funny, but it also has some profanity. So hopefully you're not too offended. It is him giving his voice to what he thinks and things. So it's used in context, and it's really great. But I thought I'd warn you about that. But it is a great read. And so I'm looking forward to us reading this and talking about some of the things in there. And we'll be reading some other ones. We have some other ones lined up, some good ones lined up here soon. So that is our next read for July. Let me put that up there while the ladies give their outros. So tell the audience one more time who you are, what you do, how they can connect with you. And if I have it up here, I'll throw it up here. Or if I can type it, I'll type it in.
I'm LaShawn Gaines, wife, mother, and educator. And my email address is lashawn.gaines@gmail.com if you have questions or concerns about your students, 504, dyslexia, interventions that you have questions about, or just even what's going on in education today. You're welcome to email me. And it was a pleasure to be with you all today.
Thank you. And I will try to get that typed in up here. If you want it to be public, I'll put it up here. I'll put it on the screen so people can connect with you before we go. Trifania?
I am Trifania Osei, also known as Elegant Granny. I am author, poet, restoration strategist, and as a restoration strategist, I help victims and survivors of abuse transition from their life of abuse to a life of a healthier lifestyle. And I also help those who support them with educational resources so that they can help the victims and survivors succeed at life once they've come out on the other side of abuse. And if you would like to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me through my Linktree, or you can reach me at yourgrannyforever@gmail.com. You can find all of my links in my Linktree. You can also find resources on my podcast, which is on my Linktree. It's called Proactive Eye. And I talk a lot about domestic violence, child abuse, sexual violence, and suicide prevention as it relates to abuse. So you can find that there on the Linktree as well.
All right. And LaShawn, let me clarify your email. It's lashawn.gaines@gmail.com?
Yes.
No number, right? Okay. All right. So let me put that up there. There we go. Make sure I got it right. So that you can reach LaShawn there, especially if you're needing, you have questions about things that may pertain to education. Okay, and let me get us all back on here as we see you later. Okay, so let's see. I have a few comments. Tisha, I love him. So I'm hoping the group does too. She says, "Smart brothers, they're brilliant." So I'm excited to read that one next month and have that discussion. So Tanisha, I'm hoping you will, come. Maybe you can come hang out with me one day, one week. Hint, hint. Join me live and join the ladies, a little round table here live and discuss with us some of the ideas in here because I know you have lots to say about it. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you. I thank you for giving me your time. We'll be back next week, next Thursday, for the last discussion. The last discussion. For the four agreements. So if you are reading with us, join us live or on the replay. Those of you on the replay, hey, thank you for being here. Make sure you say hello in the comments. Like it, give it a thumbs up if you're over on YouTube. And you can read with us. If you haven't read it, you can see this one is not a long read. It goes fairly quickly, so you can join us. You can definitely join us and next week and read and get caught up easily. It doesn't take long. And then next month in July, we'll be reading Damon Young's book. I got to get my direction together. What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker. So this is a memoir. We're going to read it. We're going to discuss the ideas. We won't be able to discuss them all. As y'all know, we kind of give you a cursory live. We'll be doing more things in the group. If you want to join WAM, you see right down there, scrolling across the screen, you see bit.ly/join WAM. That is my global online reading community for women. And so if you're a woman and you want to join us, you can join us in the group and we talk about the ideas and the concepts in here a little more. And then we come public. We also come public, at least for the month of July. We're seeing how this works with our public discussions, our virtual discussions that are public outside of the group for the next month. And we'll see how that goes. But we come here and share some of the ideas that we have from the book. One, to get you to read, because that's my thing. I want you to read more. And two, to really talk about the concepts so that way you can be more self-aware, so that way you can do better, be better, and live a richer life. So that is what I'm all about. It's been a catalyst for change, but change you can't change anyone else until you change yourself. It starts from within. So my group, the reading community, is all about that. And so we are doing that with nonfiction literature. I know most reading communities, they are fiction, not mine. We mostly read nonfiction unless the fiction is historical or something really. And I don't think we've ever read a fiction book, but there's room for fiction, but I'm really particular about my fiction text. I like nonfiction, and so we typically read nonfiction. So we read self-help, autobiographies, biographies, memoirs. We read those sorts of things. That way we can really get into real life and talk about those things that are real and relevant. And this book is relevant like none other. I know some of you are reading How to Be an Anti-Racist. We're reading Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me. We're reading those. Those are out there. Some of those are sold out. But I'm going to pick this one. This is one that I think we'll read. And we'll get to those too. But we're reading this one for July. So I hope you'll join us and read with us. If you have time to get your copy, the next book discussion when we'll start this one is July 2nd. And so you have plenty of time to get it. And that's if shipping. I know shipping is a bit interesting. So you can always do Kindle version, or the audio book, you can do that. So, all right, the ladies are here waiting, but I'm going to bring them back in so that way we can say goodbye together. And, hello. Let's do that. There we go. Bring them all back in. Thank you, ladies, for being here. I appreciate you. I can't tell you enough. LaShawn, who saved the day for me. And I appreciate you coming on the last minute. So thank you so much. We're reading the Four Agreements. Join us next week as we read the final chapter, the final part of the book, rather. Final chapters with this S. Anything else, ladies? Anything you like to say? Okay. And then we'll be back. Y'all take care. I'll see you soon. And check the replay. And if you haven't saw the first two discussions, we have three now that are available to you. You can watch it on YouTube at Dr. Tammy Francis, or you can watch it on my public page at Dr. Tammy Francis, or on Periscope at Dr. Tammy Francis. You see the thing? All right. So join us, and we will see you soon. And we are out of here. Y'all take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.